But tonight I'm going to be doing a talk about animals, which is arguably one of my favorite subjects, animals. I mean, I've always been a big animal lover, but when you look at the various disciplines in biology, whether it's microbiology or cell biology or human anatomy and physiology, I do talks on all of these subjects. For me, animal biology has always been my favorite subject. Let me give everyone an opportunity to capture the lecture notes for tonight. So those that are watching online and those here, all you have to do is point your phone at that QR code and the lecture notes will come up. Though, let me give a fair warning that I've updated this talk. Every time I do these talks, I make changes, make additions, and take things away and make improvements. And so the talks are updated more frequently than are the lecture notes. So you may find a few slides out of order. And some content there that I'm using tonight that is not in the lecture notes, but by and large, it will be the same. Okay, well, what we're mostly focusing on is the reason why we have so much science here in apologetics programs is that science is very important for a person of faith. It's important for many reasons. We need to reconcile the conflicts that exist today between what is being taught by natural science and what is being taught in the Bible. But science is also important for a person of faith because it's through science that we're learning about God's creation and the many, many wonderful things that He has made. And by studying His creation, we can develop a better appreciation of who our Father is. And tonight we're going to be focusing on animals. It's literally my favorite part of biology is what we call zoology, the study of animal biology But for me, animals are arguably my favorite part of biology, and it's our most loved parts of the creation. I mean, what God made for us is just not a suitable habitat, a place where we can live that has the food and the air and the water that we need to breathe, the water that we need to drink, but it has things that we enjoy. There's beautiful sights. There's wonderful smells. There are things within the creation that we enjoy. Things in the creation that we love. See, our Father loves us and wanted to make a world for us that we would love. That's what you do when you love someone. You want to give them things that they will love, to make them happy. And He made such a world for us, and the animals are a big part of that. We love our animals. I find most people do. Most people love animals. Now, every once in a while, you will find someone that has a phobia. You're afraid, people that are afraid of snakes or people that are afraid of spiders. Our boys are afraid of spiders and bugs of various types. You'll find people that have phobias, but by and large, people love animals. Every once in a while, you'll find I come across someone that doesn't like animals, but I have personally found that those same people often don't like children either. And I think for such a person, there's just something broken in them a little bit. But most people, I think, really do love animals and are real animal lovers, and we love our pets. But today, it's kind of sad that we don't have the opportunity to see animals like people did in the past. We've destroyed a lot of habitats in order to build our cities and so today, to see the animals, the variety and plethora of animals that God made, you have to go off to your rainforest where there's still undestroyed habitats, or to your coral reefs, and you'll see lots of animals there. Today, scientists estimate that there are somewhere between 3 and 30 million species of animals on the planet. Well, that's quite the range. There's somewhere between 3 and 30 million species of animals on the planet. That's because the estimate on the number of insects is between 1 and 30 million. Insects are really, really tiny, and we really don't have any idea just how many species of insects there are. But there's an enormous variety of animals that God has made on the planet, and they're elegant. They're in the way that they move. There's a tremendous beauty to them, and we find them endlessly fascinating. Just the way they move, the way they interact with one another. For me, it's my favorite part of the creation. I love doing my hikes. I love going out and doing hikes all over the place, out by Granite Falls, go up to Lake 22 or Heather Lake. After moving to Washington, I remember one of the very first hikes I did was up to, I don't know if it was Heather Lake or Lake 22, did a hike up to one of the most beautiful places I had seen. A crystal clear lake, so reflective that you couldn't really tell where the sky ended and the lake began, and behind the lake there was a beautiful cliff with waterfalls. So just a tremendously beautiful scenery. One of the most beautiful sights I'd ever seen in my life, practically. But after sitting there for a little bit, a chipmunk jumped up on the rock with me, and before I knew it, this chipmunk had captured the show. Because I just so much more enjoyed watching this little chipmunk jump around and feeding him some crackers than this beautiful scenery that was before me. Animals are just a really fascinating part about the creation. And of course, we're discovering new animals all the time. This was a new mollusk that was discovered off the coast of Monterey Bay recently. It's been tentatively classified as a nudibranch, which are one of our sea slugs, but it swims, so it's not quite clear what it is. Is it a nudibranch or is it perhaps a species of jellyfish? But we're discovering new animals all the time. Like I say, we're really not sure how many animals there even are. This was a newly discovered species of shark called the ninja lantern shark. Called the ninja lantern shark because it's colored pitch black, like a ninja. And also it has lanterns, little structures on its body that make light. I will circle them for you there. It has these light-producing structures on the side of its head that give off a faint blue light. So it's colored black to help camouflage it down in the deep black waters. And when it's up in lighter waters, the light blue waters, it'll emit light to help it blend into the light, to the lighter blues. Bioluminescent structures like this are actually pretty common, especially in the animals that inhabit the deep, dark oceans. A lot of the animals have bioluminescent structures that make light. Your jellyfish, for example, are like spaceships, emitting all kinds of blue and red strobing lights down in the deep dark. And we now know that there are many more bioluminescent animals than previously known. Many of them make light that are well below the range of human vision. But with special cameras or special sensors, we're able to see some of this bioluminescence that are produced by many of the animals that God has made. Well, one of my favorite areas of animal biology, or what we call zoology, is animal behavior. Because of the tremendous intelligence that's been demonstrated by some of our observations of animals. Let me illustrate a few examples from animals that don't even really have a brain. I mean, we know the mammals are really intelligent. If you've ever been around dogs or horses, you know that the mammals are really, really smart. And if you look for them online, you can find videos of people that have created puzzles for not just squirrels, but for birds to solve complex puzzles that they have to solve in order to be able to get to some food in the yard. Animals are crazy intelligent, but we have observed intelligence in animals that don't even have brains. Here I'm talking about your insects. I mean, insects don't even really have what we consider to be a brain. They have a cluster of neurons, what we call a ganglia up in their head, but they can exhibit some they've been observed to exhibit some very complex behaviors. And in fact, behaviors that are described as hive mentality. They, as a collection of organisms, as a collective of organisms, they exhibit an intelligence, what they call a hive mentality. And it's not quite clear how that works. Or if you're an old sci-fi fan, you might remember the Borg. There was in the Star Trek, the Star Trek series, there was a species that they come across called the Borg that had a collective mentality called a hive mentality. But insects have this. They have this hive mentality. There's one species of ants, for example, shown here in this photograph. These are the leaf cutter ants. Now, you can't really tell that there are ants beneath these pieces of leaves on this photograph, but these are ants that have cut big pieces of leaves and are hauling them off to their den. Well, when this behavior was first observed, it was assumed, as anyone would, that they were cutting those pieces of leaves and hauling them off to their den because they were eating the leaves. But we come to find out they weren't eating the leaves. They're actually involved in horticulture. They're engaged in farming. So here's a video showing one of these leafcutter ants cutting some big pieces of leaves, and then they will haul these leaves off to their den, but they're, again, not eating the leaves. What they're doing with these leaves is they're chewing these leaves into a paste, into a pulp, and they're feeding these leaves to their underground garden. They're growing a garden of fungus underground. They're engaged in farming. You can see them hauling them off, and you can see there their garden of fungus. All of that white that you see there is their fungal garden that's being grown underground. They chew up these leaves into a paste, feed them to their garden, and when the fungus matures sufficiently, they harvest the fungus, and they cut little balls out of the fungus and stack it up. You can see here in a second he's there harvesting some pieces of fungus, and there you see the stack of fungus that they're amassing underground. Ants are also engaged in what you might call animal husbandry, or like herding behavior. They actually keep animals. Now, the picture that you see here you might not recognize, but this is from an old Disney movie called A Bug's Life. The queen in this movie, A Bug's Life, has a pet with her that she calls Aphie. Well, what Aphie is in fact an aphid. And ants keep aphids. It's a form of animal husbandry. They keep these colonies of aphids, and they will take them out to pasture. You see here some ants with their herd of aphids. They keep herds of aphids that they will take out to pasture. What the aphids do is the aphids have a proboscis, a mouth part that will drill into the plants. They will suck the juices out of the plant, and then they exude this as a honeydew, a substance called honeydew that the ants eat. But the ants will even keep these aphids underground with them over the winter and care for them so that when they're able, they can take their herd out to pasture again. Ants are also engaged in enormous construction projects. Here we have what are called the leaf weaver ants. They create these enormous nests, and especially in areas where there's a lot of rainfall, in rainforests, the rains will flood their tunnels. So instead of digging these tunnels underground that are going to be just eventually flooded by rain, they will instead build nests above ground by weaving together leaves. Well, what's incredible about this is that all of the ants seem to know exactly what to do. Some ants will be holding the leaves together, will be grabbing on the leaves and holding them together, while other ants will be the gluers. And what they're using to glue these leaves together or sew them together are the larvae. Their larvae will secrete a silken strand, and these ants will use their larvae to sew these leaves together to make one of these nests. The mystery is, who's telling them what to do? Then all the ants seem to know exactly what their job is and exactly what they're supposed to be doing at any given time. Some hold the leaves together, others go grab their larvae, bring them up and start sewing their leaves together. But who's the foreman? Who's telling these ants what to do? And how are the instructions being communicated? This is one of the big mysteries in zoology, is animal communication. Now, animal communication is widely recognized, but very poorly understood. Numerous forms of communication are identified. These include visual displays, such as dances, and birds and all forms of birds will do dance-offs, if you will, a type of a mating ritual. Two males will get together and have a little dance competition for the females. Others, their auditory signals. For example, bullfrogs will croak to attract mates. Monkeys make warning calls to indicate that predators are nearby. Dolphins make sounds that are unique to their individual identity. There are also chemical messages, what we call pheromones, that are involved in controlling behavior. There's also tactile or touch forms of communication. Ants can be seen touching each other with their pedipalps or antenna-like structures, engaged in some communication that way. And communication helps animals do a number of things, including coordinating group behavior, but almost none of the messages have been properly translated. We know they're communicating. We hear the complex calls of whales or visual displays of things like squids flashing flashing patterns of colors at each other, but none of it has been successfully translated. There's only one type of animal communication that we've been able to properly translate, and that's the waggle dance of the honeybee. What you see here is the waggle dance in this video. You see a bee that's doing a little figure eight dance, and when it gets to the straight part of the figure eight, it does a little waggle. Thus, it's called the waggle dance. Well, when this was first observed, it was assumed that this was a mating dance, similar to how birds do mating dances. But you notice it has a lot of observers. There's a lot of bees standing around closely watching this dance. Well, it was eventually realized that what this was a scout bee that had returned from scouting out food. And what is communicating to the hive is the location of the food that it has found. The informative portion of the dance is communicated during the straight run of the dance, where the dancer vigorously vibrates or waggles her abdomen back and forth and emits strong vibrations. In addition, there's an audible buzz. Well, the angle of the straight one describes the direction of the flower patch from the hive in relation to the sun's position. The distance from the hive is precisely communicated by the duration of the waggle, where 1 second of waggle equals a kilometer of distance to the flower patch. The audible buzz that's emitted is believed to communicate the type or quality of the food that has been found. It's incredible. I mean, if insects are communicating specific and complex information to the hive, what must the other animals be communicating? What are the whales communicating with their calls to other whales in the distance? How much information are the mammals communicating to one another if insects are communicating specific data to the hive in this way? Well, recently, scientists at the University of Cambridge discovered a remarkable design feature found in these tiny little insects called leaf hoppers. This was just reported in the journal Science in 2013. This little insect jumps as its primary mode of movement and does so over incredible distances and speeds. Its jump is estimated to exert somewhere between 700 to 500 G-forces. Well, as such, a mechanism to critically control the timing of its powerful jumps is necessary. Even a minuscule discrepancy in synchronization between its two legs would cause the insect to enter into what we call a yaw rotation. If one leg fired just slightly before the other one, it would spin out of control. Well, to accomplish this precision jump, this tiny leaf hopper was designed with hind leg joints, with gears, with curved cog-like strips of opposing teeth that intermesh and rotate just like the mechanical gears that we make. The lead researcher, a guy by the name of Malcolm Burrows, stated this about its design feature. He said, "The gears in the Isis hind leg bears remarkable engineering resemblance to those found on every bicycle gearbox. Each gear tooth has a rounded corner at the point it connects to the gear strip, a feature identical to man-made gears such as bicycle gears, essentially a shock-absorbing mechanism to stop the teeth from shearing off. The gear teeth on the opposing hind leg lock together like those in a car gearbox, ensuring almost complete synchronicity in leg movement. But of course, this extraordinary illustration of design in God's creation is dismissed as an evolutionary artifact. Malcolm Burrows states this: These gears are not designed, they're evolved, representing high speed and precision machinery evolved for synchronization in the animal world. In the article, he talks on and on about design. Well, why then does he make this conclusion? Why does he say they're not designed in the end, but they're evolved? Because when you publish an article that's illustrating design, and when you talk about designs in the biological world, you better make sure that your audience, that the editors of the scientific journal where you've submitted your article know that you're not talking about real design, that you're just talking about the illusion of design, that you're talking about what looks like design but is in fact something that's been formed by purely natural processes, by evolutionary processes. Because if you don't make that abundantly clear to the editors, you won't get published. You have to say such things to get published today. There's extraordinary examples of design in the biological world, but you better not try to claim that it's real design, even though it looks design. They fail to acknowledge the implications of their own observations, that there's a designer behind designs. When you see engineering, there's an engineer. They fail to acknowledge the implications of their own observations, that behind designs, there is a designer. Well, more than any other design feature found in the cosmos, the ability of animals to fly has caused us to marvel. From the smallest insect to the largest soaring bird, the ability of animals to fly has been a source of great awe and envy. They move with such grace and elegance and traverse great distances with ease. A bird can effortlessly glide or catch a thermal and ride it skyward. But travel for humans has always been very laborious, especially over rough terrain or elevation gain. So we've long envied the flight of animals and wished that we could do such things. Well, insect flight, bees in particular, has been a long-standing mystery because many are quite large for their size. And their wings and their wing beat are incredibly fast. Their wings beat at close to 200 beats per second. 200 beats per second. Now think about that. Their wings flap 200 times per second. Have you ever, most people have heard when a mosquito gets too close to your ear, you hear that high-pitched whine of a mosquito. Eee, that high-pitched whine. That's the sound of 200 wing beats per second. That's what that is. Well, in 1934, a famous entomologist calculated that bee flight was aerodynamically impossible. He argued that their wings simply shouldn't keep those hefty bugs aloft. They beat at about the same rate as a fruit fly. That's about 230 beats per second, but their bodies are 80 times larger than a fruit fly. Well, ultimately, the secret behind insect flight was discovered, and they are now known to create vortices, little mini tornadoes along the leading edges of their wings, which give them lift. More recently, bees have been shown to use an even more complex process. Researchers at Caltech found that bee flight is made possible by a rapid rotation of the wing as it flips over when reversing direction. They concluded that this rotation during stroke reversal is responsible for most of the upward force during hovering. Our motivation for studying God's design is, in large part, due to our hope that we could copy these abilities. Leonardo da Vinci, for example, who is famous for his art, such as the Mona Lisa and his painting of the Lord's Supper, was also a scientist and an engineer. For much of his life, Da Vinci was fascinated by bird flight, producing many studies and culminating in his Codex on the flight of birds in 1505. He stated this: "A bird is an instrument operating through mechanical laws, which instrument it is in the capacity of man to be able to make with all of its motions. Well, in an attempt to make a flying machine, Da Vinci drew several plans, including a screw-shaped helicopter, a hang glider, a parachute, and this machine shown here he refers to as the Great Bird. That shows the great bird's wings as he drew them. And this is a sketch of what it would look like fully assembled. Well, many of his diagrams, many of his designs were impractical due to the heavy materials of the day. Making them out of canvas and wood would make it very difficult for a person to operate this. His Great Bird was designed so a person would lay down on it and operate the wings with his legs. But, wood and canvas is pretty heavy, and humans don't have that kind of stamina. I mean, your legs will eventually tire, and you wouldn't want to get a cramp after getting your bird machine 30 or 40 feet in the air and come crashing down, But his hang glider was successfully constructed and demonstrated in modern times using modern materials. The designs were good. Well, this practice of studying God's creations and using them to develop or improve our own designs has been a hugely important part of human technological discovery and advancement. Countless technologies could be mentioned here. I'll just mention a few. Velcro was invented after examining how burrs, those type of little stickers, would cling to dogs' to hair. Now, I want to mention something that I failed to mention in the beginning. These dogs that I showed you here in the beginning, these are my dogs, no longer with me. This is Willie and Eli and Chelsea. They all died of old age eventually, but I grew up in New Mexico and lived for a time in West Texas, and I got to tell you, you take those dogs out for a walk with you and through vacant lots or fields in New Mexico or West Texas, and you can come back with them covered in burrs. So I know well how good these burrs will stick to dogs' hair. But what it's designed for is to stick to hair as a form of transportation. That burr, that sticker has seed in it, and it will latch onto dog's hair, and the dog will carry those seeds off and then deposit them elsewhere. But after studying those burrs and how those spines are designed, at the end of each of those spines, there's a hook. And those spines have hooks in all kinds of different directions, and so they stick really well. And I know from experience that to get those out, sometimes you just literally have to cut the hair to get those things out of there. Well, Velcro was designed after studying these. After studying termite mounds, we've used those designs to design buildings. The Eastgate Center in Zimbabwe, for example, was a building specifically built after studies of termite mounds. I mean, these termite mounds are big, major construction projects. Why do these termites build them? I mean, it would be a lot easier just to dig those tunnels underground. Why are they building these huge stacks above ground? Well, they come to find out that they were very cool inside. And when they study the designs of these termite mounds, they come to understand the engineering behind them, how they maintain that cool internal temperature. And now we're building buildings that use convection currents and systematic opening and closing of vents, the way that the termite mounds operate. We're also designing swimwear after studying shark skin. Sharks are able to just, with one pump of its tail, able to slice through water with almost no friction. And after studying the shark skin and their scales, we've started now making swimwear after that's designed based on shark skin. We're now making tape or other types of adhesive materials after studying of gecko feet. Gecko's feet, we come to find, have microscopic hairs that increase the electrostatic forces that keep things, that can stick things together. Think about how, if you've ever taken a balloon and rubbed a balloon on your head, you can get it to stick to a wall. Those are electrostatic forces. Those electrons that cover that balloon are then enable it to stick to a wall. Well, those microscopic hairs of the gecko feet have increased the surface area, allowing those electrostatic forces to even hold much more strongly. And now we're designing things after studying gecko's feet. We've modified or improved turbine blades after studying humpback whale fins. They were observed to be notched, and it came to be understood that they had a tremendous force, especially during very, very slow movements. And we're making turbine blades after studying humpback whale fins. We're also using our knowledge of bird wings to design morphing airplane wings. And of course, robotics has long drawn from both insect and other animal movements. But despite this long-standing practice of searching for designs in biology, secular scientists today refuse to acknowledge what this practice affirms. Listen to this definition of biomimicry, what this practice is called. Mimicking biology is what this practice is called. Listen to this definition of biomimicry from a scientist at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. Now, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab is one of these city-sized laboratories that we have in this country. Listen to his definition of biomimicry. This is from their talking glossary of biological terms.
Biomimicry is the process of understanding the designs and materials we find in biology and adapting them for human use. So over the millions and millions of years of evolution, there's tremendous wisdom and efficiency in biological systems.
Notice what he says. There are designs in biology, and behind those designs, there's a tremendous wisdom behind it all. See, naturalists, these natural scientists, see evidence of design. They speak of design all the time. There's a tremendous number of examples of designs in biological systems. They recognize their design, but refuse to acknowledge what those observations imply. That behind designs, there's a designer. And behind wisdom, there is a mind, the logos. See, they recognize their designs, and they recognize that there is wisdom behind those designs. How can they then not understand that there is a mind behind the designer of what we found in biology? Well, animals are so spectacularly well designed that they cry out, "I am created." But again, scientists just refuse to acknowledge the witness of their own eyes. In Romans 1, Paul describes well what is happening today in the scientific community, in what we call natural science. He says, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools." Well, that is the state of natural science today. They just refuse to acknowledge the witness of their own eyes. And professing to be wise, they have become fools, claiming that such tremendous examples of designs could form all on their own through purely natural processes.